Hello and welcome to my first ever live stream. So today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of a quantum leap. And if you have ever wondered why some people seem to be able to have an extortionate amount of luck and why everything they seem to focus on turns to gold, why some people are able to just go through leaps and bounds in progress in the things that they're working on, and it makes you think, like, what am I missing? How does it feel like some people are consistently quantum leaping, changing their realities? What I have realized after coaching thousands of people over the years is there is actually a little bit of a journey or a set of steps that people go through in order to quantum leap. And that is what I want to go through with you guys today in the anatomy of a quantum leap. So this is something that I have reverse engineered myself. I've gone through this so many times over the years, and I've definitely found that there are certain aspects of quantum leaping that just everyone seems to go through, that when we can start to apply them to ourselves, it can start to create these huge, profound shifts in our life. But there are certain things and ways of understanding reality that we have to embrace. For example, a lot of people see people quantum leaping and they think that it's an overnight thing. So there's been someone that's been blowing up on social media recently, and people in the comments are just like, gosh, this just seems so easy for you. And the one thing that they're saying is, this was not an overnight thing. You haven't seen all of the other accounts that I've made that have allowed me to go viral in this way. When you see a certain company or a certain podcast or a certain business owner suddenly go from basically unknown to being one of the most talked about people on a platform or in an industry, it's not because of one day. It's not because of that particular episode. It's because of all of the work that they've done up until that point that has compounded to create what looks like a quantum leap. And there are actually, I would argue, multiple smaller steps that we go through to, and they're like smaller quantum leaps and smaller portals that we actually fit ourselves in to go through so that we can halve the time that it takes us to get to a certain outcome. But that is what these people have mastered. Whether they realize that they've mastered it or not, I believe this comes down to a set of character traits that we either have or don't have. And a really big character trait that a lot of the people that are quantum leaping have is an ability to keep moving through discomfort even when things aren't working out, even when things get really hard. An ability to get back up again, even if everything is against them and every piece of evidence that they have is saying this isn't working. They're still going to get back up and they're going to try something else. They may feel shitty for a period of time, but it doesn't stop them from getting back up again. So let's turn to the anatomy of a quantum leap. There is, as I've said, a certain set of steps that we go through. So every single person will initially have some sort of goal that they want. So I want you to think of the thing that you are potentially manifesting towards at the moment. Maybe it's that you want to create a really large audience and you want people to be following a mission that you've created. Maybe it's that you want to completely shatter your financial reality. Maybe it's that you want to meet the love of your life. Whatever it is, whenever you declare out loud, and if you haven't declared it out loud, that is actually your first step. Whenever you declare out loud, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to happen, you are basically setting direction. This direction is basically the thing that formulates our entire manifestation journey. It's the thing that when we speak something out, it's like a form of magic that starts to happen. Now, what happens in the quantum realm is there are multiple different aspects that are going on behind the scenes. And there is something called the bridge of aligned events, which I have very roughly drawn out here. But this bridge of aligned events basically allows, whenever that direction is set, it starts to unform naturally behind the scenes. And I listened to this podcast episode the other day of this guy that's got this, he researches these esoteric concepts and spiritual practices, and he's done a lot of DMT in his life, and he said that one of the beings that he met when he was on DMT was these like robot beings that were basically creating all of reality. And they were like, we're just basically, if you imagine like a carpet, you see the carpet like perfectly created, but underneath the carpet it's all it looks like it's been built. It's like the kind of really gross underside of it, where it doesn't really look that nice, but it's created this beautiful tapestry on the top side. And that's what these beings are doing underneath. And what is creating our reality is our thoughts, which are electric, they set our direction, and then our feelings, which is what magnetizes our reality. And so this bridge of aligned events that starts to form is part of this quantum field. It basically shoots off all of these different timelines and all of these different realities. And so the reality where you have that thing already immediately is created. So this is where, if you've ever heard about instant manifestation, and I talk about this in some of my other videos, instant manifestation is where something happens immediately, not because it shows up in your reality immediately, but because as soon as you set that direction and you have that intention, a timeline with that possibility is formed immediately. It's already happened because time doesn't exist. It's a constraint of our 3D reality. But when you get up to 4D, 5D, 60, 70, time doesn't exist like that. And so even if we were one dimension up, this is where time doesn't exist. And so everything is actually happening all at once. So technically, even though our brains need time to understand what's going on, we can set a direction and it can already be happening somewhere. And 5D is then, there are unlimited possibilities for what these realities could be. So you could decide to go left instead of right when you get to a crossing of a road, and it would shoot off potentially a different timeline. And so that's what this bridge of aligned events is. So actually the manifestation is instant, but it's what you then do after that point that dictates whether it comes to you, whether you actually get to experience that timeline, or whether you get stuck in the current timeline that you are in. And that all comes down to our inner world. Now, I teach something called inner authority. Your inner authority dictates your outer authority. Everything that we have inside of us, our beliefs, our thoughts, it is creating our inner reality, our inner authority. And that is going to dictate. So we're going to start to walk towards this bridge of aligned events. And as we get closer, what's going to start to happen is, so all of these, what forms the bridge is what I call fork in the road moments. They are these what seem like small decisions or maybe large decisions at the time, but they create this decision arc where we have to make a decision of, what am I going to do? Am I going to take the plunge? Am I going to choose a different reality, or am I going to keep on going the way that I've always gone? And so on this bridge of aligned event, we have a lot of these fork in the road moments, and they basically just keep on cropping up. And they are asking you a question, and often they look like opportunities. They may look like, sometimes they maybe don't look like opportunities and they actually look like pain in disguise. So for example, if you're in a relationship and that relationship is not aligned, sometimes you have to make the difficult decision to end that relationship, and that is a fork in the road. But they often present themselves as, I'm going to call them opportunities. And I've drawn a star here because there's always a gift in them, even if they are painful. There's always a silver lining to anything that we're experiencing. And so we'll get presented with these opportunities, and then this is where we have these fork in the road moments. We have to make a decision. Okay, am I going to continue down the path I've always gone down, or am I going to make myself a little bit more uncomfortable and do something that I've never done before? Let's say that you are manifesting being a world-renowned podcaster, for example, and you want to get a huge audience. And you get an opportunity when you're not quite ready yet. And someone comes to you and they say, I want you to be the host of this show. Now, you're not ready yet. And so internally, your insides start to create a load of discomfort. You start to feel really anxious. All of these thoughts start coming up, and you start to, I call it a wheel of inner authority, and we basically have these 4 stages that we're going to go through, and it's a consistent cycle. And what happens as soon as that comes up and that anxiety actually comes up, we actually go back to a version of ourselves which is reactive. And so even if you've been enjoying your life, if you feel super confident, when you set that direction, which always usually happens, you feel really confident, you're excited, whenever this fork in the road comes up and it asks us to do something different and it creates that discomfort, it's going to push us back to a 1. There are 4 stages. The 1 is reactive. And remember, this is a consistent wheel. And so that 1 basically brings up all of our old shit. All of our old anxieties, all of our old patterns, all of the parts of us that feel that we're not worthy, is going to bring up every single one of them. and it's going to force you into, I call it like a wormhole. And so this wormhole, whenever you go into, well, I mean, we don't know what it's like to go into a wormhole, but how it's described is that when you go in, it basically, everything in the middle eventually will start to like compress. So everything just gets really, really small. And so you can imagine that when you go in, this is going to be really dark when you go in, and it's going to suddenly like compress everything. And that's because it's basically bending space-time for you to get somewhere else, and everything looks really distorted. For us, this is an emotional journey. And so that condensing and squishing and trying to manage the darkness or the void that we're experiencing as part of that wormhole that we decide to go into. So if we decide to go down that path less traveled, we're going to enter that wormhole, and it's going to feel dark and it's going to feel confusing. And this is often where people call it the void. This is where it feels like nothing's working, but this is actually where you are transforming. So this is the quantum leap in action. It just feels like discomfort. And this is why it's so confusing, is because every single person that has had a quantum leap has gone through multiple of these. And I reference this down here, where your quantum leap is going to look like multiple of these. So you are going to have so many of these like wormholes that come up that it's going to stretch you for different phases and aspects of the journey. So coming back to that podcast example, say if you want to create a podcast that is world renowned, where you get to interview some of the most incredible people in the world, but right now you have social anxiety, the first portal that you're going to have to overcome is overcoming that social anxiety. You're going to have to unblock your brain and your mouth so that you can speak clearly, so that you can have engaging conversations without going bright red in the face, without that flush coming up. I'm speaking from experience here because this was literally my own reality. I used to have severe social anxiety, and this was the first thing that I did. So my first portal was basically going from severely socially anxious with PTSD, undiagnosed ADHD, depression, all of it, generalized anxiety disorder, to becoming almost anxiety free. Now, one of the ways that I did that was I joined an improv class, and improv class caused me to go through this darkness where every single session I hated it. I was dreading every single moment of it. I would feel sick beforehand. I would hate the entire experience. I didn't enjoy a single part of it because a lot of the time I wasn't actually able to coherently express what I wanted to. But what those 8 sessions did was it created a safety for it's okay for you to fail in public. And even if you just say something like, la, 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 you just say nothing, like a load of garbage, it doesn't matter because the whole premise of improv is yes and. So no one's there to shame you. So it's actually a really safe environment to build that skill. Even though I hated it, by the end of 8 sessions of 3-hour blocks, my brain and my mouth had started to reconnect. And so although it wasn't comfortable for me to go from point A to point B, it was a necessary part so I could be here speaking to you guys right now without a script, because my brain, my mouth have reconnected. The next part is potentially, starting a business, starting a social media profile. And when you do that, you have to overcome all of these visibility blocks, which if you've been working in a full-time job for the majority of your life, you're going to have to overcome. There is a certain amount of releasing you're going to have to do around what you believe your position in the world is, and you're going to have to change a lot. And there's a lot of things that comes up for us around changing, like what if I change too much and people hate me? What if my family judge me? What if my friends all judge me and I lose all of my friends? There's a lot of belongingness that starts to change. We also feel like we're potentially going to get cancelled, that everyone's going to hate us, we're going to be judged, we're going to be criticized, and that for a lot of people feels like life and death. Again, I'm speaking from experience here. This was what I had to go through. And so along the way to getting this quantum leap success, there are going to be a lot of these moments that don't feel like they're profound potentially, but they are the things that are happening. And so when you enter one of these little wormholes, you enter as a 1. Now, one of 2 things is going to happen here. Either you're going to allow this feeling to dictate what happens, and you're going to allow it to be an unconscious feeling that creates your reality. And that will mean that you will start going backwards. And so instead of you leaning forward and being like, I'm just going to deal with the discomfort, you actually start to lean backwards and you're like, this is not safe for me. And so this is where often the spring back effect happens, or the pullback effect, where you feel like you're making a load of progress, but then you start to sabotage yourself and you end up back where you were before you started on the bridge. Now, this doesn't mean that that opportunity is never going to come around again, but it does mean that then the journey for where you want to go is going to be longer. And that's okay. For some people, the long way round is perfect, but we still want to use these periods of time for our expansion. Now, the other thing that can happen when you're in this tunnel is you become aware of what is happening. And you say, I'm starting to feel a load of discomfort. What has been triggered? What awareness can I start to build? So in order for us to go from a 1 reactive to a 2, where we become empowered, this is where we need awareness. We become empowered by knowledge. And this is where people start saying, I know that I'm in this place. I know that my field of vision is being very blurred right now because of the feelings that I'm experiencing. But as soon as you come here and you have empowered yourself with knowledge, you can make a decision. And there's one of two things that happens here. Either just awareness is enough for you to be like, I'm aware that this feeling is making me want to not take action. It's making me want to go backwards. And so either that's enough of awareness that you need to then go from a 2 to a 4, and the 4 is all about taking aligned action. When you are taking aligned action, this means you're taking different action. And so you are going to be required when you're in this tunnel to still take action whilst you feel like shit. Whilst you feel all of these like emotions that are coming to the surface, you are still going to need to manage your human so that you can take action, so that you can get out of the wormhole. You need to, whether you're in a tunnel or anywhere else that's dark, the only way that you reach the end of the tunnel is by putting one foot in front of the other. And by keeping on walking, you will eventually start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. That is always what happens in these void periods when we're doing a quantum leap, or when we're just changing our reality and changing our behavior in some way. It's not going to feel comfortable, but we have to keep on putting one foot in front of the other unless we start going backwards. So for some people, that empowered with knowledge is enough to be like, ooh, okay, I can see what I'm wanting to do. I'm going to consciously feel this feeling. If you're smart, you'll probably do some nervous system regulation, but I'm going to take the action anyway. And so you take the action and you make a breakthrough. But for some people, the feelings that come up in their body are so extreme. And this is often because there has been, whether it's big T or little t trauma that has happened in their life, which says this next step could result in something catastrophic that I don't know whether I can handle. And when we have that, this is where mindset alone, so going from a 2 to a 4 immediately, you can do with mindset work. This is where you can start programming your mind with affirmations. You can just start telling yourself, I'm lucky, I can do this, good things always happen to me, I'm strong, I'm powerful. And that is often enough to have a breakthrough and start taking action. Mindset work, incredible. But when that feeling is too big, mindset work doesn't work. You can't just go from a 2 to a 4 when your feelings are that big. And so for anyone that has felt this, has felt that, you know what, when I start to feel that anxiety, that fear, I just pull back, I just shrink. I can't make myself post on social media. I can't make myself sell if you have a business. I can't put myself forward for the promotion. I can't ask this person on a date because I'm terrified. If you literally feel like you become a slave to the feelings that you have in your body, this is the step that you need. You need to become neutral. You need to transform who you are being. This is Dr. Joe Dispenza's whole thing of like breaking the habit of being yourself. This is the step of breaking the habit of being yourself. And like he says, this step isn't for everyone. Not everyone needs it, but also this step does require you to heal in some way. And healing's a journey. It's a journey that's not always comfortable. Now, I have found that the fastest way to go from a 2 to a 3 is using breath work, parts work, and subconscious reprogramming. If you are using all 3 of these, that is the most sustained way that I have found to be able to break that, to take the feelings that you are experiencing, take them into a flow, and this is what the whole In-Awe app is all about. You take them into a flow and you remove them from your body. This is where you do that work. And you basically want to work, so going from a 2 to a 4, is conscious work, affirmations. You're working with your reticular activating system. That's the filter that you see the world with. You can use just subconscious reprogramming tracks, and that will just work with your brain in that way. Going from a 2 to a 3 to a 4 requires you to work your nervous system with completely your subconscious mind. So this is where we actually need the brain to come offline in order for us to use this method. Because the thing that actually blocks us from working with our nervous system, which is where all of our trauma is held in our body, which is then connected to our brain, because we're a full human with all of these different parts that are connected. We are constantly getting signals that are sending to the brain to tell us, that are dictating, our conscious thoughts, that are dictating our reality. We need to bypass the thinking mind so that we can get into the body, and our nervous system has this natural response of wanting to complete fight or flight responses. This is the mammalian brain, and it's the same brain that if you have ever seen a dog or a cat shake off, they shake off anxiety or stress. That is literally them using their mammalian brain to discharge, to, if they've experienced something traumatic or just something that's created stress, that is that response. And we all have this response as well within our bodies. And so we want to use that response to basically shake out anything that is still active in our body, because that's all these feelings are. When you experience those feelings, it is an active fight or flight response that is coming on from a past version of yourself. And so this is where we want to connect to this past version of ourselves, and we want to soothe that past version of ourselves. We want to say, it's okay, you're safe now. Nothing's going to happen, I can protect you now. And in order to really get into that state, we need to change our brain waves. We need to turn the thinking mind off. So when you're watching this right now, you're being high beta. You want to actually change your brainwave state to either an alpha or ideally a theta. And so breath work is a really, really great way to change that brainwave state, especially if you have ADHD. Trying to do a meditation with ADHD alone is really, really hard. But when you use breath work, it bypasses that, changes your brainwave state, so then you can do the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation, you can do the reprogramming, you can do the parts work on the back end of that. So you then want to transform yourself and become neutral. When you are then neutral, you will have changed identity. So this is what I call like a quantum shift in being. In order to quantum leap, you need two things. You need a quantum shift in being and a quantum change in action, which is our next step. But in order to integrate, fully integrate, and this is where a lot of people get stuck in healing, they get stuck circling the same experiences over and over again. And they're saying, I'm doing all this healing work, I've been doing it over and over again, but I don't know what's happening, I don't know why nothing's changing. It's because the action hasn't changed. And so if you're sat there as well saying, I've just been doing loads of action, I've been consistently showing up, I've been doing action for as long as I can remember, in fact, I'm working so hard, then you're potentially not changing the action. Because doing the same action over and over is fine, but at some stage you've got to do a different action because that's what stretches you. So in order to integrate all of this work that you've done, you need to take a different action. And that different action is the thing that allows you to integrate. And when you take that action, and this is where you go, I do, this is the action step, you move one step along on the bridge of aligned events. And that is the journey that people take over and over and over again. And so we just went through from a 1 to a 4, that is what you're doing here, constantly. You are constantly going through these micro changes in your being so that you can eventually manifest a different reality. Sorry, my drawing is so bad right now. Trying to draw with my non-dominant hand is really hard. But this is the journey that we go through. And the thing that this, I really hope, makes you see is a lot of people are trying to manifest the wrong way round. And so they're saying, I want to manifest this thing, so I want to have something different. When I have something different, then I'll do something different. And then when I'm doing something different, I will be someone different. That is the wrong way round. In order for us to manifest into Quantum Leap, we need to first of all be something different. We need to change our being, our vibration, because that is the thing that communicates with plasma, which is 99.99999% of the living universe. It is that meditation or that experience that that guy had that I said right at the beginning of this, where he was seeing all of those little alien beings like creating our entire reality, they are basing it off who you are being. We are the frequency. We set the direction. And if we are not being who we need to be, we aren't going to change our actions. And so this is why these fork in the road moments are so important. It's that example I gave before, where if an opportunity came to you tomorrow and you weren't ready, the answer is, why are you not ready? What can you do to prepare yourself to be ready? You know, something came up for me a few months back, and it was an opportunity that I was like, oh, this could be really, really cool. But I didn't feel ready, and it was this real wake-up call of like, oh, I need to get my ducks in a row. I need to actually change something so that I become ready. That ended up falling through. But then for the next time that something came through, I was ready. I was more ready. And so all of these opportunities, whether they work out or they don't work out, they force us to prepare ourselves, to change who we are being, so that then we can change our action, so that then we can change what we are having in the reality that we are experiencing. So if you want to quantum leap, this is the journey that you need to take. And the biggest thing that you need to understand is that this action piece is so important. If you are just doing healing, but you aren't taking any different action, this reality doesn't change. You're not going to be transforming, because you could become stagnant at 3, and you could change all of your inner world, but unless if you're actually changing your reality as well by taking a different action, you'll just remain at this first step on the bridge. You won't actually go any further. You won't allow yourself to break through any barriers. So you've got to be okay with multiple of these journeys, and also knowing that in those journeys, there's going to be discomfort. There's going to be potentially pain. There's going to be frustration. There's going to be moments where it feels like nothing is working. And you are going to have to dig deep and say to yourself, am I willing to continue to grow? Because remember, growth is the entire point of our entire universe. This life that you are living, you have chose this life based on the lessons that your soul wanted to learn. And if we don't allow ourselves to embrace that, then we are going to be avoiding discomfort for our entire lives and avoiding growth. And we can't quantum leap and get to the edge of this bridge if we aren't prepared to go through all of these micro initiations. And then we see on the surface, so you'll do all this work, and then everyone around you will just see this step. They'll see the final step where it suddenly works and there's a breakthrough, and then, whoa, everyone's so impressed, everyone's so in awe of everything you are doing. But that's just the final step. They weren't along the journey for the 5, 6, 10 years, whatever it is that you have been building experience, that you had been putting yourself out there and getting rejected, that you have been building your credibility, that you have been building a portfolio, that you have been building your inner capacity to hold love. That's what people don't see. And it's often not the bit that people talk about. They just talk about this last step. But actually the quantum leap, and this is the full anatomy of it, is all of this process over and over and over again. So that's what I want you guys to walk away with today. I'm sending you guys so much love. If you enjoyed this, please make sure that you leave a comment below. I'm going to be trying to do more of these lives and improve my set. A blind fell down literally as I was doing this, so I think I'm super over contrasted right now, but we will see where this goes. There's a lot of changes that are going to be coming onto this channel, and for anyone that was here with me live, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. For anyone watching on the replay, thank you so much for watching and tuning in, and I would love to hear what you took away from this in the future. And I'd also love to know, what episodes would you like me to film next? Do you have any questions that you'd like for me to answer? I'm going to be doing slightly more of these kinds of style things. So yeah, let me know. Send me a message, follow me on Instagram @InAllManifestation, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.